Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and happy Hanukkah. You may be asking yourself the question, why am I looking at a wine bottle with a disintegrated label and it's empty? What is the purpose of this wine bottle? Well, let me tell you about this wine bottle. This wine bottle was found in a cave of a gentleman in upstate New York, a non-Jewish gentleman who, and I mentioned that fact because he did not know what he had. He had in his cave, in his wine cave, about 200 cases of a wine from the year 1990 from California. It was one of the first kosher wines made in California by a person by the name of Craig Winchell. Hi Craig, how are you if you're watching this? We will be watching this, God willing. And it is a Cabernet, and Baruch Hashem, somehow it got into the hands of this gentleman, and a lot of it survived. I'm not sure how much of it survived, but I'm told most of it survived. Survived as in, most 28-year-old wine bottles you open, the wine doesn't taste like anything. Most of the bottles that were opened of this wine, the wine tastes like something. It tastes like enough where it was sent into Wine Spectator, and the generous lady at the Wine Spectator gave it an 88. We're talking the wine that's now, not the wine that was back then. So, tonight, we're going to talk about the name Gan Eden, or Garden of Eden, and what that actually means. This is the first video for Heart of Israel Wines, which will not be covering a wine from Israel. This is a wine from California, as I mentioned before. 28-year-old bottle, straight up Cabernet Sauvignon, 1990, still alive. We're drinking it, and I'm going to turn it over to my friend Nachliel to talk about what is Gan Eden.
Well, the Garden of Eden, the big prize, the big fish, and so long and thanks for all the fish, that kind of stuff. Well, actually, that's not where I want to take you. But I do feel that this is a very appropriate time to talk about the Garden of Eden when we are talking about Hanukkah, because Hanukkah is a time in which we talk about light, and Kabbalistically speaking, the idea of that light, which showed itself in Hanukkah, while at the time of the Maccabees, 2,100 some years ago, was not appreciated until its recurrence in the next year. We now celebrate that light as being a glimpse into something greater, some sort of internal and eternal glory, which was revealed through the story of Hanukkah. And this is related to all of the process of creation in which the people of Israel, the Jewish people, are struggling for a refinement and definition of themselves through the various exiles, which is what's expressed in the song Ma'oz Tzur Yeshuati, which we famously sing in the German gospel too.
Interesting.
Now,
that's a whole other story.
As for the name of Gan Eden, as you can tell, it's very old and disintegrated. Mm-hmm. And part of the idea of Gan Eden is being something pristine and ancient, which we also strive to reconnect with. And there is this double side to it. One side of the picture is that it is pristine and pure and whole. But the other one is that Gan Eden sort of preserves all of the developments and achievements to come in such a way that they can be appreciated in their wholesomeness in the world to come. And that's expressed curiously in the Talmud through the story of wine. I would like to read to you the part, and I'm going to turn to you, Tzvi, to tell us, as a wine person, I'm going to ask you a question about wine. So the Talmud says in Brachot 34b, there's a whole discussion about a verse which says, Ayin lo ra'ata Elohim zulatecha. There is something which no eye has seen other than God Himself. And there's a whole discussion about what that means. And finally, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says, Ze yain ha-mishumar ba'anavav misheshet yemei bereshit. This is wine that has been preserved in its grapes since the 6 days of creation, and that is something which no eye has ever seen. So now let me ask you, Tzvi. Mm-hmm. Why is it that a wine, a vintage from a particular year, generally can be identified by connoisseurs and generally cannot be repeated or recreated?
Why can it not be repeated? Identified by connoisseurs, I'm not really sure. Some people are that good they know their wines. They've tasted wines from different years, from different wineries, from different grapes, and they're seasoned. Their palate is seasoned. They can do that. They're at that level.
Mm-hmm.
What was your second question about?
My second question is: you have, for example, a Cabernet from Yatir Winery, 2007. Mm-hmm. They can make the same Cabernet, the same ingredients in 2008, but it's not going to be the same.
Climate, terroir, the way that the people who handled the grapes were handling. Also the region, like, for example, well, it falls into climate, but at the same time you have, like, let's say Cabernet from Har Bracha, it's totally different from a Cabernet from Yatir. Mm-hmm. For people who have wine on a regular basis, they can eventually tell you, oh, this is a Cabernet from Yatir, or this is a blend from Yatir. Mm-hmm. I had a gentleman in a store, I gave him one of my other wines called Amos from Tekoa, and there's 4 grapes in there. One of the grapes is a Syrah, but that Syrah comprises 13% of the blend. And this guy is sitting there for like 2 minutes, and he's like,
"This is the Syrah from."
He said, "There's a Syrah in here." I was like, "It's a minority grape in there. 40% of it was Merlot and Cabernet and other." So certain people, I guess, taste certain hints in the wine depending on their palate, depending on their mood. I had another gentleman, he tasted all my wines, and some of the wines he's like, "I don't even taste anything," and he's like, "Maybe I'm in a bad mood. This is a great." And then he asked me, he's like, is this what the wine is supposed to taste like? And I said, actually, no. He's like, yeah, I know. I can tell it's supposed to taste like something else because I can tell that it just died.
I think I was there. That's a Gatcham Ron.
No. This was when I was in Muncie. I had a guy taste a rosé, and he was just having it personally on an off day. But at the same time,
you told me the story. I thought I was there.
He was aware of himself and his own palate.
But you realize you're saying, let's say the wines are from a particular region. Yeah. So let's say Yatir always uses wine from the same region. Let's say, okay, it's not a blend or anything.
Just south of Susia, yeah.
So even so, the Yatir Cabernet from that same region will be different from year to year.
Yes.
Right, and you see, there's all these different components which are different about them.
It's alive. It's like a person. Every year he's different.
There's the terroir, the climate of that particular year, the sunlight of that particular year, even what time of the day it was picked on, how early, how late in the season, how much water it received, the nutrients in the earth. All of these things make wine the most sophisticated drink which humans can produce. Whereas other drinks can have nuance and subtlety, like different kinds of bourbon, whiskey, and spirits, but it doesn't have the same level of diversity and richness as wine does, which is why wine is such an important part of sacrament and part of religion and so on, because there's something very unique about it. And we recognize it's one of the most elevated products of the earth that humans can create, can make, which is why there's also a separate blessing on it, which is very unusual.
Judaism.
Right? Other drinks would just be shehakol, which is kind of a very generic, the lowest in the food chain, literally. Now, the idea of the Garden of Eden having a wine which has been fermenting, which has been being enriched throughout the process of history, finally to be enjoyed, as the word Eden also means something delightful. It means several things, but that's one of the things it means. Like Ma'adan.
So when Israeli parents name their kid Eden, or like usually girls.
My niece is named Eden, but I've had a student, a boy, his name is Eden as well.
Eden,
yeah, because Eden comes from...
Adin.
Adi means jewelry.
Oh, that's something
but
else.
it's related, because that's with Ad. Idan also means an era, an epoch.
Like forever, Adi.
Yeah, no, so the Garden of Eden also has to do with the wholesomeness of time itself, because it is considered to be outside of the dimension of time, sort of a nexus in which you can view a garden of time, just like you can view animals in a zoological garden in one place outside of their natural habitat, or a botanical garden. So too you have the Garden of Eden, which means the garden of time. So it's not something that is part of this world.
Rome.
Now, when we say that wine is the final product of the process of creation itself, you realize, because that's exactly what wine is. Wine embodies within it all of the nuance and details of everything that went into its making, which is such a beautiful idea, which is expressed in wine. And I'll finish that before we have a l'chaim, and an idea that ties us into Hanukkah. I was commissioned working together with an artist, a writer in Jerusalem, on a poem about Jerusalem. And this poem had a lot of different allegorical aspects we're talking about Jerusalem, and one of them was Yain Atik Yashan, which is very old wine, and olive oil, which I put together inside this orb, which is the foundation on which Jerusalem is built. There's also honey and milk, there's water, there's a fig tree, there's all kinds of things going on here. But the point is, this is really what I expressed here is the idea of the two holidays which are post the Bible, extra biblical, which is Hanukkah,
rabbinic,
and which is rabbinic, and Purim, which is outside of the 5 books of Moses, outside of the Chumash. And those two, Kabbalistically, are considered to be the two legs which the Jewish people stand on, and those which will remain, even if all the other ones were to become obsolete, because their contribution to our development will eventually become obsolete.
When Mashiach comes, the only two holidays we'll celebrate.
However you understand what it means in the future to come, maybe it's saying even if they were to lose relevance, these would remain eternally relevant. However you understand it, the idea of Hanukkah is oil and Purim is wine. And there's a lot of connections between the two in terms of the Garden of Eden. But in this idea, what I embedded is that oil is the energy, the fusion, the energy, cold fission, sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah. It's the energy of creation, while wine is the enrichment of its process in its fulfillment. And in those two ideas together, I connected Hanukkah and Purim as this basis on top of which Jerusalem is built, expressing the beauty of creation. And in that I wish to tie together the idea of the Garden of Eden and this fine wine, to which I shall now say Happy Hanukkah and L'chaim.
L'chaim, L'chaim. Just one quick thing. Speaking of wine and oil, my friend Nati Rom, who runs this company called Lev Ha'olam out of a place called Esh Kodesh or Shiloh, near Shiloh, sends people packages, which they purchase. And inside those packages, sometimes you'll get olive oil from Shiloh and wine from Tekoa, from Amos. So I bring in the big bottles from Amos, and he ships out the small mini bottles, the 375, I believe. So just a shout out to my friend Nati. Happy Hanukkah, Nati. And yeah, man, we're bringing oil and wine and other goodies and chocolate from Hebron, and tea from Ofra, and soap from our friends at Saboneto, and all these
soap opera.
Exactly, not a soap opera, hopefully. So all these wonderful goodies and other things which I don't even know about, and arts and crafts. And happy Hanukkah, and looking forward to the next video. So
hashtag
tasting
and Torah. Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.